one right into the other. I can hear it. All right. Here I am. Thank you. Out of breath, yeah. I am Ron Moore. I'm so glad to be able to join you tonight. And yes, I just wrapped up and said good evening, and now I'm running over here. And so I'm just glad to be able to do both in some capacity. So thank you for bearing with me. I apologize for being late, but this is the third candidate forum, and we're so glad to be here tonight. So let's, if we can, all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right. Before we begin our event, just want to tell you about our sponsors tonight. They are the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, the Tribune Star, and the Vigo County Public Library. If we could all give them a round of applause for making this event possible. And just want to make this note that even in disagreement, respectful communication and behavior is required. Yelling, using profanity, and speaking abusively are certainly not allowed. And we, of course, will not have any issues with that, I'm certain. All right, we're going to start things out by introducing our candidates for tonight. And we're so glad to have candidates from several districts, and you're going to have to help me because I am coming up here, so I'm not 100% sure on who's all here and who's not, but I believe I know mostly everybody up here. So starting out, Alan Morrison, District 42, is not here tonight, but I do believe that Andrew McNeil, District 43, is. So we would like to have you just start by saying who you are, a few thoughts about yourself and kind of your platform, and we're going to give everybody 2 minutes to speak. This is Robbie, by the way, and so Robbie's a very popular figure here. She has two signs, 30 seconds and stop. When you see 30 seconds, you have 30 seconds.
All right,
when you see stop, stop. So there you go.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate the honor being the sole Republican on the panel tonight. And Terre Haute's just really opened their. Most of my career has been in territory or account management, and currently right.
Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to be here. So I'm Curtis Cummings. I'm running for state representative of District 46. This is my decided to run for office because I am really ready. Decided to run for office because I am really ready to get big money out of politics. Of state companies, I thought that's not how democracy is supposed to be. Your vote should not be bought, and that's in Monroe County. So I'm very familiar with what's going on with our school systems and what's going on in.
From the Poland area, from Clay County, lived on a farm over there, grew up there. My brother and I still operate the farm. So I think that type of a background where you're basically trying to kind of bring people together in cases to involved with that. So I think that was a good background for me to be involved in this. I have been involved in the political arena some before. I did run 10 years ago when the district was redrawn. Park County Sentinel, I was assigned to cover the town. I went to town council meeting.
Gosh, I've been in Vigo County pretty much all my life except about 3 years. 55, married to my husband, retired colonel from the Army. We'll be married awesome. And then I have 3 daughters, Anne, Greta, and Kate. So I had one graduate from, we're public school kind of people. One graduated from IU, one from Perchance. We educate everyone. When people go to private schools and leave, they come back to public schools. We're ADA accessible. We help everyone. And so my definition of public school is we take them all. And we do the best possible we can to put everyone on the same ground so that everybody has a chance to be the best version of themselves. So that's how I define it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Well, I'm certainly a product of public education, and as I mentioned, that's the primary thing that has me motivated to be a part of this. Believe it or not, I went to a 2-room school. Okay, so 4 grades in one room, 4 grades in the other. My uncle was the principal. Yes, I'm that old, 2-room school. It did close down the last year when I was there, but that was at Poland, Indiana, and they went to Brazil High School. But my view of that is that public education, as Tanya said, it takes everyone that you could to meet the needs of everyone who was a part of that school. And as she pointed out, there are some differences when you look at some of the private and some of the other types of schools. that don't have to do that. I think at the time that I went in, that kind of fit me fairly well. So I think it was a good way to be challenged and to try to make the best of yourself. And it prepared me well to go on then to other higher education and into the workforce. So I think it's a good definition to look at it as being the entity that takes everyone and does everyone's, gives everyone a chance to make the best of themselves. I found it very interesting. Earlier this year, being down to Vincennes, there was some information at the George Rogers Clark Memorial about the Northwest Territory, and it was saying public education was even built into some of the creation of that. So we have a history that goes back that far, and we need to do what we can to strengthen and maintain public education in Indiana.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Public education certainly is a picture into the local community. It is, as Tanya mentioned earlier, retaining jobs, retaining people in your community. It starts in the school system. And the public school is a reflection of what's going on in the community. And it's also a reflection as to what's going on at the State House. You know, I've heard stories from educators within the district that, for example, one teacher, she teaches art, and she has a 75-cent per student budget to buy her supplies. And when we're debating at the State House level, like, what to do with a $6 billion surplus, and yet you have teachers that are running GoFundMes. What the heck are we doing? It's mind-boggling to me. And when I work as a CASA and I go into the schools, at least over in Monroe County, you know, these public schools, they're accepting kids that have learning disabilities. They're accepting kids that, you know, they've been pulled out of the home because they're in foster homes because of opioid abuse. And kids that have developmental delays, and they don't have enough resources in the school because you have a teacher that's leaving a lunch period and a principal that's leaving his office in order to come take care of a student that's having a crisis. And then the other students in the class or in the school suffer. You know, that's what public education is. They accept everyone, the good, the bad, the ugly, from all walks of life. And we're not supporting them, we're not funding them. So that's what state level government can do.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm a product of homeschool, and I homeschool my kids. But I have a lot of friends who are public school teachers, and had a lot of conversations on the campaign trail. And I will tell you, with the state allocating over, combined with federal funds, over $12,000 per student follows each student. $12,000 per student. Over half of the state's budget goes to education. They increased it by some $2 billion in the last legislative session. A lot of people don't know that, but if you calculate that out to how many students are in a classroom, they should be able to pay the teacher 6 figures, cater a meal, take the kids in a limo, and fix what are they doing with the money. You look at administrative hires compared to students, compared to teachers, and it's outrageous. It's an incredible graph. $2,000 a year for a PR guy that does, I think he messes around on Facebook or something. I mean, it's incredible the amount of money that goes through the school system. I think it's important that we have accountability and that we start seeing education results. So that's me.
All right, thank you very much. And we have a question now from the League of Women Voters of Vigo County. And again, I'm reading this question verbatim. The abortion bill is on hold due to lawsuits brought against it for violation of rights. Are you willing to rewrite the abortion bill to restore rights and to allow medical providers to use their best medical judgment without risk of criminal charges? And again, this question is for anyone who would like to answer it. Yes, sir.
All right, so I believe that it's every woman's right to make her own reproductive decisions based solely on her religious beliefs and moral and ethical code. Stop there. no woman plans on having an abortion. They just don't. It's not on some bucket list that you want to do. But with 520 menstrual cycles in her life to navigate, that's 520 possible chances for her to get pregnant. We should focus our time, money, energy, resources on things like access to birth control, age-appropriate sex education, and making those things affordable for all. Because it's the marginalized groups that don't have access, not to mention the healthcare deserts, such as the one that I just drove through to get here today. The State House has the unique ability to truly affect the daily lives of Hoosiers, and we need to not weaponize practicing physicians based on what they believe is right for their patient. And that's my stance on it. Thank you.
I think that's pretty well stated. I will adjust just a little bit by adding in a comment of something that was asked years ago of one of our presidents about abortion, and the terms that he used was it should be safe, legal, and rare. So the concept, as what Curtis was saying about it should be a woman's decision, and I don't like saying choice. To me, choice is like something that's real simple. I'm sure that would be a decision, and a decision with a lot of thought and a lot of soul searching, and certainly consultation with medical people and possibly with clergy. So I think that is the kind of attitude that we should have toward having women have that opportunity to do that. Now, you do have some limitations. I mean, I don't think anybody likes the idea of partial birth abortion or very late-term abortions. So I don't have a problem with having some kind of a sliding scale in there, which I believe, as best I understand, is what Indiana has had. And so, but certainly you don't need to have cases like the Ohio 10-year-old that was raped and, they're going to force her to have a child. That makes absolutely no sense at all. So I believe it should be a woman's choice. You can have a little bit of a restriction on what you might be doing late in the pregnancy. And I think if you ask people overall throughout the country, I think they would probably agree with that. I think Kansas gave us an idea, basically, of how things would be versus what you have in Indiana, where the gerrymandered legislature says, well, we'll make that decision, and if the folks don't like it, well, they can vote us out. Well, they probably can't because they've got a gerrymander to the point where we really can't. But I think there's some similarity between the conclusion in Kansas and the conclusion we would come to here if we really gave people the opportunity to share their views statewide. Thank you.
Well, this is a very divisive issue for sure, and this is an issue that's been going on for 50 years. I hate to date myself, but Roe v. Wade was a decision in the year I was born. So it is for me. This is very important for you to hear this. I understand this is probably going to cost me every vote in the room. But I'm a very honest person. I'm not ashamed of who I am. My principle is that scientifically it is a child, it is a human being. We know that scientifically. People are angry about it, they yell, they scream, but it's true. This is truth. This is not religious. And as such, it is guaranteed under our founding documents and under the Declaration of Independence to be given and granted and to recognize that it has a right to live. That's my guiding principle. I don't get into the nuances and the craziness and the side things. The truth is, the rare instances that there is the life of the mother, that is already taken into consideration in the medical community. They've already been able to save the life of the mother. So that is my stand. I stand by it. Thanks.
The question was, would I be willing to rewrite it? Yes. Absolutely. So we had a special session where we met in Indianapolis for 2 weeks, and this very complicated issue. As a woman, I've born 4 children. It's not always easy. People live in different circumstances. Women get in different circumstances, and we are the ones that bear the 9 months of childbirth. I also know that being a representative means that you represent the people, all of them, independents, Republicans, Democrats. And when 80% or more of Hoosiers were fine, relatively fine speaking, with our Indiana abortion laws as they stood and said, we don't want this, 80%, the polling was out there, then I feel it's my duty to represent what the people want, which is leave the abortion. Our current laws that we had before the special session were okay. Every session I go to, I've been there 4 times, there are always abortion bills, there are always votes on them, and I just believe it is such a complicated and such a personal matter that it should take place between the mother, the partner, and the doctor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our questions from our sponsors. And Elizabeth is bringing up all of the questions from the public. So
What is that?
these are questions from you all. And so I'm going to do my best to get through as many of these as we can. And again, that's where we're going to be as strict as we can with the 2-minute limit. I'm going to do as best as I can to read. If I don't read all the questions, they're divided into subjects. And so I'm going to try to get through the subjects as best I can. So please bear with me, you all. But we'll just jump right into it. Again, if you do not have your question answered, you're free to meet with these candidates after, and that'll start at about 7:45. Okay, so first question, and again, this is to everyone. Do you believe Indiana elections are safe from voter fraud? Do you think we need any additional safeguards?
Oh, you want to go?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll just talk real quickly. I am on the Elections Committee at the State House, and I've worked in a bipartisan manner to pass a lot of election laws, and Indiana resoundingly has some of the most safe and secure elections in the United States. So yes.
Okay, go ahead.
When I voted in the primary, literally what went through my mind as I was voting was, damn, this was secure. I mean, because there were so many checks, and I felt incredibly safe that my vote counted, and I could not see, I tried to see where there could be room for error. And yes, I believe that our Indiana elections are incredibly safe and secure.
I would very largely agree. I've had a couple of cases in the past where there were problems with the ballot. Maybe it wasn't presented right, or that what was given to someone, but it was just human error. Those kinds of things happen. The only cautionary point that I would make is I've been hearing talk about intimidation that may take place in the polling places, and maybe poll workers may be intimidated by people who are, trying to influence them. And I hope that does not happen, because I think we do have safe and secure elections. We just need to make sure we follow the rules.
Yeah, I think Indiana does a very good job. We need to keep it the way it is. I wouldn't be opposed to shortening the early voting. Actually, constitutionally, the way we were set up was to have an election on one day to capture the mood of the nation in one day. So expanding that or lengthening that, I'm not for that. So.
All right, and I'm going to follow up with the same category before we move on to a different subject. Do you believe the 2020 presidential election was stolen? It's a question. Quite a few people actually wrote that question.
No. No.
Okay.
Wait, do you want us to answer?
If you would like to, you certainly can.
No.
All right. I believe
Definitely
everybody
no.
said no. I believe
No.
everybody said no. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Moving on. We see there are many laws becoming more restrictive in general. This trend is alarming. Why do you feel this is, and how can we reach a more moderate Indiana? Sorry, I'm trying to read handwriting. So we see that there are a lot of laws becoming, according to this person, more restrictive in general. This trend is alarming. Why do you feel this is, and how do you think we can reach a more moderate Indiana? Yes, sir.
I don't know. I think the first thing that came to my mind when I heard this is just that I don't remember where I heard this from, maybe my brother-in-law, but I like the way it is. It's simply that it's the government's responsibility to protect me from you, not from me from myself. Does that make sense? It's the government's responsibility to protect me from you, but not me from myself. So that, just let that ring into your head a little bit and see where that goes. But that's kind of what I think of when I heard that question.
Right. Yes.
The point that came to my mind, as Chris was talking about what comes immediately to mind, what comes to my mind is the supermajority. What we have in Indiana, have had for many years, is a supermajority in both chambers. And I've tried to think about an analogy of that. It's almost like a car with 2 accelerators and no brake or something like that. And the idea is that if someone has an idea that they think is proper, and it may be restrictive, as some of these may be, there's not really that mechanism in the legislature the way it is now to be deliberative, to think about that, to consider whether or not that really is what ought to happen. It's like one idea and a whole bunch of people all jump on, and away they go. And there seems to be kind of a radical extremist caucus over there that takes some of these ideas and does some of this very restrictive stuff. A good example of some of the things they tried to do in restricting what teachers had to teach or couldn't teach and things like that. That's just one example. So I think the supermajority, quite frankly, is the root of a lot of that problem, is because you don't have a more balanced legislature.
Yes.
I know you're busy up there.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to sift through, but yes, please go.
I'm going to kind of tag along with his. So currently in the House, there's 71 Republican seats and 29 Democrat seats. And it's pretty similar in the Senate as well. Polling says and voting says that there's 45% Democrats. So if there's 45% in the state that are Democrat, reason should say we should be around 45 seats in the House. That's called representation. So as what Mark said, the gerrymandering and the redistricting, even I went through redistricting two years ago, or was it last summer? And we went around to 5 different cities and heard from hundreds of people, and not one person said, I like the maps. Everyone said, draw them fair, draw them fair. And no one was up there saying, we want 70 Democrat seats. No one was saying that. They were all just represent Indiana, draw the maps fairly, and it didn't happen. So if the balance shifted a bit, where it was a little more even, I think we would have better laws for everyone. And the other part is local control. Our community is a lot different than Carmel. They have different needs. They have different they collect a little more taxes than we do. So we are just different communities. And I think as a state level, what we try to do, what I've seen in 4 years, is we make these blanket laws for everyone that don't obviously fit the needs of your own community. So I think that would also help get it a little more moderate.
Yep.
I now realize why Bob didn't come to this. That's kind of target rich. I don't really know which one to take a hold of here. I mean, it was the gerrymandering. I'm not sure. It's called representative republic. It's important that we're not a pure democracy. But if the public schools were doing a great job of teaching civics, folks would understand that. It's not gerrymandering. It's constitutionally mandated. It's gone on from the beginning of this country. So every 10 years we're required to take a census, and then you adjust the lines based on population. We have the maps every 10 years. You can go back and look at them. When the Democrats were in control of the House, they looked like crazy little dinosaurs and monsters. It was hilarious, these circling out to get more Democrat votes in here. And as the Republicans have been in control, and you can see this, they've gotten more and more normal. The lines are extremely normal. They complain and they holler every time this happens. And then when they pass it, they'll secretly tell you behind the scenes, yeah, they're fine, they're good. The District 43 changed 3 townships, so it was not a big change here.
All right. Few questions about education here. Please give your opinions on the use of vouchers as a way to use public funds to support private schools. And that is to anyone who would like to answer it.
I'm giving you guys all an opportunity. First.
We were going to follow your lead, but we don't
I
need to.
can if you want.
No, I can go ahead
Okay.
and address that as well. I think this is one of the problems as I look at education. You know, you've got a pot of money here, and the gentleman over here said $12,000 follows each student.
Correct.
I actually cover the school boards in Park County, both of them, and they talk in the neighborhood of $6,000, and I think about $7,000 is what they're talking about from the state formula per student. But it is a very significant amount of money. There's no question about that. It's just not quite that much. But the piece that they would also tell you is that if the money was not taken kind of off the top to be going to private schools, there would be more money available for the public schools. And that's where, as we've talked before, they must take everyone. I didn't mention before, my wife was an elementary school aide in special education at Rockville. And so she was dealing with some of the students who had difficulties and doing the best she could to try to help them. So I think the vouchers have been overused. I think we have maybe the most, largest voucher system in the country or something like that. So you may have some instances, some cases where someone needs to be able to do something different than the public school, but I think we've dramatically overused that with the voucher system being way too easy. I think there were some safeguards early on that have gone away. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'll go next. I'm going to use my 3 minutes here to say something. 2 minutes. Thank you. All right. So, sir, I'm sorry, but you said, now I see why Bob's not here. If Bob had been here, it would have been 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. And you say why Bob isn't here? Aren't these his constituents? Like, why isn't Bob here? Seriously. I drove across 3 counties in an hour to get here tonight.
All right.
And I don't understand.
Okay.
With that being said, I will go off. I will go to the side, and I will say that I will support public education. I'll support public educators 100%. And I really want to hear what Tanya has to say, since she's an educator herself.
Before that happens, this is not a debate. We're not going to do the questions back and forth. If there is a question that is asked to the candidate, it will come from the public. So if you would like to have a discussion after the fact, by all means do that, but we specifically have this for a forum, not for a debate. So if you would like to address anything that's addressed to you, you are by all means able to do that, but we're going to keep it a forum standpoint. Thank you very much. All right, Tanya, would you like to speak?
Sure.
If you would like.
Oh, sure. So I've learned a lot about charters and vouchers. So basically, vouchers are to go to religious schools, and charters started out as Andrew said, the public schools aren't always doing the best. So businesses came in, because it's a money grab, right? Businesses came in and said, hey, we can take this $12,000 per student and open our own charter school and educate better than the public schools. So that's how they started. The thing to remember about charters is they're unelected school boards. They don't have to have licensed teachers. And sometimes they're just companies. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. They went to go find the charter school board meeting like we have, and the building was closed. It was public there, and it was closed. So charters are a different sort of beast. In Vigo County, okay, there's over 290 school corporations. And in Vigo County, we are lucky enough to have 1. Some corporations have 11. But these charter systems, if we shut down a building, which we just did, we've got to use it, or according to state law, a charter company can come in and take that building for $1 and operate their own building, which is why we keep repurposing our schools, in case you were wondering about that. And again, if a charter and we've already paid the tax, okay, I'm getting too much into the weeds, but anyway, sorry, 30 seconds. So Andrew is right, we did put over $2 billion in education, but again, we diverted it. We made it so that when you get a voucher as a family, if you make $140,000, you can send your kid to free private school now. So the problem for me is public education educates 90% of our students. We need the money. So quit diverting the money away from public schools.
Well, again, so my background, again, is I actually did go to a public school in Maine a long time ago, but my background is in homeschool, and I can tell you from the homeschool community, we don't want anything to do with public funds. So we don't want vouchers for our homeschool. We don't want tax dollars that we pay property taxes for the public school, and we're fine with that. So, just.
All right. Thank you very much. Next question. What is your plan to recruit more teachers into public schools, dealing specifically with the teacher shortage in Indiana? Anyone? Go ahead.
I'll take a stab at it, I guess. The numbers that I saw at the beginning of the year was there were something like 2,500 open positions. And then I saw an update on that recently that it was still something like 1,500. I believe, quite frankly, this has been a long-term process by some folks perhaps just disliking public school. I guess in some cases I think they dislike the teachers union so much that they destroyed the public schools to try to get even with the union, but maybe that's not the case. But it seems like the disrespect that teachers have had and the type of pressures that they are under has discouraged a lot of people from going into that. You know, you've got experienced teachers who will tell their children and other young people, you probably don't want to go into this particular field. So I think a lot of that, quite frankly, has come from the top in having an improper attitude and being basically disrespectful and dismissive of the people that are in those types of positions. It's, as I said, it's a long-term thing. It's been going on for many, many years. But they tended to kind of say there's problems with that, and if you take away the funding, well then if there's no funding, well then the problems become real, and you create a cycle that makes it difficult to be able to be successful and makes it difficult then to be able to hire teachers that want to be a part of that. There's some wonderful people in that teaching profession, but a lot of them are very discouraged and feel like they're not being properly either rewarded or respected.
Yes.
So two aspects, respect and money. So we finally passed a law that says every school corporation has to, starting salary is $40,000 a year. $40,000 sounds like a good income, I agree, except if you graduate from college in something other than teaching, you can probably make a whole lot more. $40,000 is great. In 5 years, you'll make $45,000. You know, my kids are graduate from college. Their friends are starting salaries $40,000, and within 5 years, they're up in the 50s or 60s. Okay, so part of it is money. Money doesn't fix everything. Respect is a huge thing. We just had a bill, 1134. I'm sure that number rings a bell to people that were paying attention. And this law was going to require that every teacher has to put their lesson plans for the entire year online by August, I think it was 4th. Okay, I don't even know when I'm usually teaching until the day before because schedules change. So these constant laws that attack the respect of teachers as professionals, that's what's making it hard for someone like me with 4 children to say, hey, you should become a teacher. My own children, they're like, should I become a teacher? I'm like, you'd be good at it. You know, I'd like you to. And they're like, doesn't make enough money. So I think respect is just a huge part of what I do every day, and the culture needs to change.
Yes.
I 100% agree about the culture change. So between hostile parents, a hostile political environment, working hours are not always paid hours, and standardized testing that isn't benefiting the students, I believe that teachers are experiencing what a lot of us will call burnout. And when you have prospective teachers, you know, they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and they're going through school, and they're trained to be the best educator that they can be, to be there for their students, to care and protect them, and regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their race or their home life, where they live, how much income the family has. And then these teachers hit the real world, and they realize that it's not that way, that they don't have the resources to take care of these kids, that they have a budget of 75 cents a student, and they don't have enough time to even eat or sometimes pee. It needs to be a culture change. It has to start in the school systems, in the highest levels, both in college and in the actual public school systems. And what I would do is I would incentivize folks that want to go into public education, right? If you want to increase economic development, and if you want to keep people in your county or in your communities, give them a reason. You know, when they graduate from college and they're paying off all this student loan debt, why don't you give them a little bit of assistance to help them pay that off? If they stick with the school system or they stick with public education for 10 years, by God, they've earned that right. They've earned that right to get some of their student loans paid off because they've given themselves, they've sacrificed themselves for our community. So that would be one of the very first things that I would do.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I hope we're going to get to some of the questions that I've picked up out there on the door knocking, like inflation or energy costs, because it's kind of number one. But so I'm not running for superintendent of this public school, and every question seems to be about public education. But I will tell you, the state legislature has nothing to do with setting teacher pay. We hand a big chunk of money to the school corporation, and it is negotiated between the union, the teachers union, and the administration. If you have a problem with teachers' pay, you're going to have to talk to the administration or to your union. And also, if you want to incentivize teachers and do, you know, kind of free market thing, you're going to have to get rid of the union because it's a part of an agreement. You can't just, anyway. So.
Well, how it works out is that we're answering the questions that they've given us, so
Absolutely,
we'll
I
continue
get you.
asking those questions that they give us as they come in. Next up, though, actually, as you would have it, do you think Indiana needs to do more to address pollution problems in the state? And that question goes to everyone. Go ahead, yes.
I just, so I had a 2014 Ford F-150 and I really enjoyed my truck, but I don't enjoy the 14 miles per gallon that the EcoBoost engine supposedly gets. Got a hybrid now. I love it. I love it. And I think that, you know, 38 miles per gallon, city, highway, combined, it's wonderful. And I think that it's a great opportunity to create jobs in Indiana by investing more in high-capacity batteries, by investing in that technology. We have great resources through the Indiana Small Business Development Corp and also through Purdue that we could start really just creating jobs and reducing our carbon footprint at the same time. And I mean, at $4.29 a gallon, yeah, you know, you could be like me. And there's a shortage of that type of technology and a shortage of the workforce. So I would support anything that could help reduce our carbon footprint and leave the world a little bit better for future generations.
I'm going to piggyback on that. Now's the time. We are a manufacturing state. We're known for that. And the EV market and the battery, it's the best time to get into it. We lost Intel, you know, making chips to Ohio. We have a great trained workforce here, but we need to put money behind it. We need to incentivize companies to come here. We need to invest in the future because our pollution is not getting any better.
I happen to have a notation here in front of me that someone had said Indiana was ranked 48th for natural environment based on air quality and pollution. I'm not sure of the source, but just to give you a perspective of that. So I think we have some issues with that. I live in Park County now. We are blessed with state parks and some wonderful things like that. So we are very happy to have an environment that is welcoming to a lot of people. A lot of folks really want to come and see that. And so that kind of agricultural and farm and community background is something that's important to me. But I think the points about how we need to be able to work toward making a better environment overall is true. I think we have had, you know, problems with the cancer rate that we have in many of the areas seems to kind of fit with some of the industries that may have been there. So we need to be sure that we're monitoring those things properly. And the one point I would make in regards to like electric cars, I think we need to be holistic in the way we look at this. Is electric cars may be a wonderful thing, then you take it home and plug it into something where the power is coming from a coal plant. Have you really helped yourself a whole lot? So if you look at that more holistically, you probably need to be going more to a solar system on each individual house as best you can, so that they collect sun during the day, they can charge the car at night, and you're not just trading some of those. So it needs to not just be grab one thing and say that's where we want to go, we're all going to drive electric cars. We need to be more holistic in how we look at that as we try to improve the environment.
I have a big problem with the hypocrisy of this movement. So the United States is the cleanest energy-producing country on the face of the earth. And you have...
All right, 1 second. Please be respectful when everybody's speaking. Thank you so much.
You have crickets from the environmental left when it comes to China and India, the two biggest polluters. So we are crippling ourselves, and energy costs specifically are going up because of environmental policies. So we need to get back to opening up our coal mines and getting back to the resources that Indiana has. Yeah, I understand that you guys are not happy with that. I get that. But the general public understands that when you're crippling yourself in smog, I mean, 48th, are you? Yeah, have you seen California? Rolling blackouts. I mean, we don't want to become California. We don't want to be plugging they're told them don't to plug their electric vehicles in anymore because they're out of electricity. So that's where we're headed if we don't start reversing some of this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question. In your view, what can legislators do to address healthcare disparities among families and children in poverty, especially to expand services throughout the state? Discussing healthcare with this question. Yes, sir.
I think that's a case where the incentivizing is what Curtis was talking about with schools. And there's a lot of that, I think, already going on. I believe it's the Lugar Center has been a part of some efforts here to try to be able to incentivize doctors to be in areas that are underserved. I think that may be part of what the question is getting at, is that you've got areas, you know, we've got some of the best technology anywhere in the world in the medical field, but it's not accessible to everyone. You know, in the area, the county I live in has no hospital, and there are several of them that don't. So I think what we can look at doing there is, as we say, to try to incentivize, to try to encourage people to be in that medical field and then to reach out into that. And there's a lot of that has taken place. You know, there are people that have used some federal funds to be able to have particular types of medical processes and you know, almost cooperative types of things. So there's been a lot of progress, I think, already in doing that. But I think we need to do more because we do have some areas that are dramatically underserved.
Yes.
One thing that I would pretty quickly propose on the state level, and it's something that hasn't really been discussed on the state level very much, and I don't know why, because it's a wonderful program, and is that of community paramedicine. And that's utilizing our paramedics who are nearing retirement, or even younger medics. I'm not going to discriminate. But this would be a pretty sweet gig for a medic whose back is pretty much worn out from lifting patients all day, and they have a lot of education and knowledge and years of experience and training and going into homes. And I can't tell you the amount of homes that I've been into, and there's just pill bottles all over the table because just something as simple as medication reconciliation, helping our elderly with that, you know, helping with blood pressure checks, helping the, you know, going into your 911 system and seeing who are the highest volume callers, right? Maybe it's the diabetic that has type 1 diabetes that can't control his blood sugar because can't afford insulin or because they can't gain access to a primary care provider. But if we had a community paramedic that was part of the fire department or part of the county EMS system that could go and check on those people, not only would it reduce costs because it's less trips to the hospital, but it could also potentially save lives. So that is a great example of how we can extend medicine into the rural communities, is through community paramedicine.
You know, I talk a lot about education and teacher shortage, but there sure is a nursing shortage as well, and doctor shortage. I think we saw as a result of COVID, talk about burnout. Our healthcare providers were amazing people that did overtime over and over again, and my heart goes out to them. So we have, one thing we can do is incentivize more people to go in the medical profession. Also, Indiana ranks the 7th highest in hospital stays, which is a problem. So don't go to the hospital, by the way. We could lower prescription drug costs, which I have consistently voted to lower prescription drug costs, and it always fails. But there are things that we as a state can do and should be doing. We do have a $6.1 billion surplus. And when we need to look at that money and say, how can we help Hoosiers? How can we help them? Healthcare is a big issue, and I expect it, hopefully, to get what all the attention it deserves this coming session.
Okay. Do you support, and just sticking with healthcare for just one more question, do you support the cap price on medication like insulin? Will you try to lower the price to make it more available?
You say cap price?
Cap price, yes.
Making sure.
Like a price limit. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust me, I'm a small business owner, so I'm all about healthy profit. But healthy profit should not be paying for a pharmaceutical executive's like third jet or fourth home. You know, when the shareholder at a pharmaceutical company is the shareholder's priority is over the patient that lives in Clay County, like that I have a problem with. It is just the cost that for these generic drugs, the cost. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I worked in a hospital in Monroe County, I won't name the hospital, but I got to see some of the billing. And a 500 milligram Tylenol tablet, one Tylenol tablet, was $28. And that's what they billed to the insurance company. So yes, I would be 100% about just really supporting Healthcare 2.0. If you haven't heard about Healthcare 2.0, please Google it. It's empowering the physicians, empowering the patients, and taking away a little more power from the pharmaceutical companies.
Go ahead.
Yes. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Yes, and I think a lot of that is actually being handled at the national level with some of the things like with insulin and all that. But yeah, some of the things are just outlandish. You know, those folks that do a lot of research, and I've been involved in the backside kind of with research types of things. Yes, there's a lot of basic research goes into creating final products. They have to be able to recover the money that they invest in those things. But you get some of these outlandish examples, like what Curtis is talking about, that there doesn't seem to be any other way of controlling those except having the government try to be able to put a cap on some of those. Yes.
Price controls never work. I would never support price controls.
Thank you very much. A couple more yes/no questions. Are you in favor of legalizing the use of marijuana in Indiana? And of course, you can expound if you'd like. Go ahead.
All right, going back to the pharmaceutical companies, this is fun. Considering during the opioid pandemic, that's when I worked as a medic, I, at one point in time, responded to a public park in Bloomington where I thought I was responding to one patient that was unconscious and unresponsive and not breathing, but when I got there, I realized it was 6. And we literally depleted all of our EMS resources to care for 6 patients, and that was in the height of the opioid epidemic. Regardless of the fact, here's the deal. Pharmaceutical companies were able to make a buttload of money off people that were dying. From 1990 until now, we killed off something like 799,000 Americans because of overdoses. Yet, marijuana, cannabis, remains a Schedule I drug right next to heroin, right? That makes literally no sense. Absolutely no sense. This is a crop that can be grown by our Indiana farmers. It can be taxed. We've seen it be successful in other states. And it's going to become decriminalized at the federal level sooner or later. But as you know, we allow pharmaceutical companies to make a ton of money off of drugs that killed people, yet the farmer that wants to grow it in rural Indiana is, or the veteran that has PTSD, or the person with chronic pain can't utilize something that's natural. It's mind-boggling to me. So yeah, I would support the legalization of cannabis in Indiana wholeheartedly.
Yes.
Yes, I support legalizing cannabis. So I'd like a more measured approach. I would like to go medical first. I believe it's very important for people that suffer from cancer. Epilepsy is a really big one, and for veterans. And, you know, it's really hard to explain to students how you can get in a car in Ohio and have some cannabis and drive across Indiana, and in Illinois, it's still legal, but if you get stopped in your state, you can go to jail or get a citation. So we're an island. Everywhere around us is parts legal. And if you want to just look at the economic development side of it, we're losing millions of dollars that could be taxed. But more importantly, it's about people. I was talking to a constituent the other day. His son suffers from epilepsy, and the only thing that he has found to work consistently is marijuana, and they have to drive across the border and get it, and it costs a lot of money. And he was just pleading for me, do whatever I can. So yes, I do support it. I prefer to do medical first, but if there was a vote tomorrow to legalize it all, I would be a yes.
No, I do not support legalizing marijuana.
Thank you very much.
I would support the medical part. I really would be pretty close to what Tanya was saying here. Is I'm aware of people that drive to Illinois. We're obviously not that far from it to be able to access some of that. And the medical thing, I think, is very definitely the case. I'm a little concerned, I think, as some other people are as well, with just wide open recreational use and age limits and some of those are the kind of things I think could use some study, but certainly yes on the medical.
Thank you very much. If the U.S. Supreme Court reverses its decision, will you support or oppose same-sex marriage in Indiana law? That is a yes or no question to whomever would like to answer it.
Phrase the question again, would you?
I'm reading the question verbatim. If the U.S. Supreme Court reverses its decision, will you support or oppose same-sex marriage in Indiana? And I'm guessing that is stemming from the abortion legislation that's come through and the concerns from some that it may trickle into same-sex marriage. So if that were to be a thing that were overturned or reversed, would you support a same-sex marriage law in Indiana?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Love who you love. Love who you love. It's not the government's responsibility to tell you who you can marry. That's, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, love is love.
I don't know what I'm saying yes or no to, but no, I would not support homosexual marriage.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, there is a legislative issue, this is a question, there's a legislative issue that you personally disagree with, but the overwhelming majority of your constituents are in favor of. Are you willing to set aside your personal feelings and vote the way of your constituents? Yes, sir.
God bless this question. Yes, that's the job of a state representative, is to represent the people in your district. That is the whole point. You are a public servant, not a politician. And yes, I would listen to the people in my district and not to people that donated to my campaign. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll take a little bit of a nuanced approach to that, and I say that because I remember hearing a discussion by someone who was a representative years ago and someone who I respected a great deal. But he said, in his view, you had to have a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of thought that goes into that. You could have a particular case where a large number of people were in favor of something that was not a good idea, that perhaps was discriminatory. You know, if you were in Mississippi in 1966 or something like that, you might very well have thought you were representing the people and not been on the right side of what should be done. So most of the time, yes, you're going to be basically following the views of your people, but there needs to be a little bit of judgment into that, into whether or not that really is the appropriate thing to do on a rare occasion.
I've probably voted more than 600 times in the last 4 years. And I will tell you, I think of every vote. It's very important to me. And I think I'm the representative of my community. So the answer is yes. I try to vote in best interest of my community every single time.
I think it's important that a representative be accessible, and definitely I've had lots of different conversations. You're gonna meet different points of view, and that's really a good thing. It's been enjoyable having those conversations, even when they adamantly either disagree or agree with me. But it's impossible to find a representative that is going to mirror your views exactly. So I think it's important that whoever is representing you be honest and open about their opinions and their views, and that you have a good idea of how they're going to vote. I think that's important.
All right. What would you do as a legislator to attract more people and businesses to the state of Indiana? Go ahead.
I would support our entrepreneurs and small businesses within our communities as much as possible. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when you're looking at outside companies coming into a state, things like Google, Amazon, insert big company name here, they're looking at the neighborhood and the community that they're looking to go into. And if the downtown is desolate, if there's nothing to do, if there's a lot of crime, it's just not an attractive place for a business to move into. If you're trying to create jobs, if you're going to create jobs, you have to start with small business. You have to start with the local entrepreneurs in your community, what I call the folks that have an idea in a garage. Support them. And you can do that through helping them write business plans. You can do that by providing grants and economic incentives. You can do that by providing training resources. Y'all, I dropped out of college, and I started a business out of my 2-car garage. I was brewing beer while I was on my days off from the ambulance as a way of relaxing. And if it wasn't for the Ivy Tech Entrepreneurship Center and the ISBDC, where I was able to send my business plan in, get advice, learn how to attract SBA funds, learn how to pitch to a bank. I mean, I went to 4 different banks before someone approved our loan because there is no rich granddaddy of Switchyard. The point is, you bolster that small business community, and all of a sudden more things start flourishing, and you're empowering people within your local communities. So that's what I would do. Thank you.
I'll add to that. I think some of what Curtis said is exactly correct. I attended a session, a roundtable with the Lieutenant Governor last week, and they were talking about areas of the state that are more or less poised for growth coming out of the pandemic, and Park County was one of them. And they talk about why. But the discussion that you get into with economic development, in many cases, is actually community development. If you have a place, and this has changed, when I was coming out of school and looking at something, you found where the job was and you went there and you lived wherever the job was. But a lot of the younger people now in particular will want to find where they want to live and then try to create a job with entrepreneurial or work from home or something of that nature. So I think a lot of the focus needs to be on the community development side of things, providing attractive places to live, a good environment, as we talked about before, the broadband that you would need to be able to conduct business in rural areas so that you have a place where people want to live because it's attractive to be there. Thank you.
I would put more money in our small businesses. We as a state often give tax incentives and tax breaks to corporations in very large places, Amazon, fill in the blanks. I don't think we do a very good job of supporting entrepreneurial and small businesses. And I would like, you know, piggybacking on what you guys say, you know, you got to love where you live. And if you love where you live, it shows, and people want to stay. And, you know, you've seen those communities that are exploding because people like where they live, there's things to do, and so we need to invest in our communities. We just passed $500 million for what's called the READY Grant, and it went to it made communities work together to do projects together. And I'm sure you've read in the paper, Vigo County got a lot of them, Sullivan got a lot of them. And that's the kind of funding that we need to do, is take our money from the state and help push it to little economies, little towns, not so much the donut communities around Indianapolis.
Thank you.
Yeah, small business is the engine of our economy, and we have to do everything we can to unleash the entrepreneurial spirit, as I try to butcher that word, that exists in the American public and in Hoosiers. I have several friends that have opened businesses recently, and the regulations and hurdles that they had to go through were heartbreaking. It was absolutely ridiculous. Apparently, and I didn't know this, and something I'm going to work on when I get to Indianapolis, but Homeland Security is involved in engineering studies and business code enforcement for if you've got a tiny business, you're opening it up and it has a bathroom. Somehow Homeland Security is involved in all of that. And we're not talking about building codes. The building code's a separate local issue. So some of those things, I don't understand why in the world, when we're wanting small businesses, wanting folks to invest in their dream and put their own capital at risk, that we put so many things in their way. So I'm for lowering taxes and regulations for small businesses.
Thank you very much. All right, I think we have time for one more question. And so we're going to get through this one, and then we'll go to our closing statements. It is, what programs or initiatives would you recommend allocating more funding to? Do you believe surplus money should go to programs and initiatives in need, or the surplus money go to taxpayers for refunds? So specifically asking about the surplus and what to do with it.
Would you mind reading that one?
I'll read it one more time.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that, Curtis.
You're fine.
You're fine. What programs or initiatives would you recommend allocating more funding to? Do you believe surplus money should go to programs and initiatives in need, or should the surplus money go for taxpayer refunds?
Okay, thank you.
I'll go ahead and take
Yes,
that
go ahead.
first, yeah. Go first for once. So the tax dollars, they're the taxpayers' dollars. They belong to the people. So I would advocate for a permanent tax cut. What that means, when you get a surplus, it means they're collecting too much. So I'm not for a top-down economy. I'm not for experts micromanaging our lives and figuring out ways to take public funds and stimulate the economy by investing in this business if they like it, or not investing in this business, picking winners and losers. It's a known fact that the government's money, when they invest in the economy, so the private sector, when it uses its dollars for risk and puts its capital at risk, is more efficient than any government dollar. We already know that. So I trust the American people. I trust Hoosiers to know what to do best with their money, and I would advocate for returning it back to taxpayers.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm just being polite.
Go ahead.
That's wonderful. And I don't have a problem with the idea of the refund. I mean, I think the idea of the refund in some fashion, I think part of the system that we saw this year is, I believe in March they said we're going to do these refunds and they'll come out in May, and probably, when did y'all get those? Was it September or something like that?
Last week.
You know, they didn't have enough paper to print the checks or something like that. So, I mean, there were some issues with that. I think adjusting the taxes, kind of as the gentleman said, may be the better thing to do rather than just immediately trying to send that back. Adjust the tax rates so that you're not collecting that much more, and work that balance down over a period of time. And there were some cases where they did a few of those types of things as well. So I think that would make sense. But you know, you don't need to be spending a tremendous amount of money, sending the money back out to the taxpayers immediately, but work that through. And there are some priority areas I think that we've identified, you know, some areas with maybe education, with healthcare, where you've got some pockets that have great needs, that I think it's fine to utilize some of those surpluses into those areas to be able to try to help level the playing field for people that, and that may even be in the case of businesses, as the gentleman was talking about all the restrictions and everything. You know, there may be some things you can do there to make it easier to start a business by utilizing some of the funds in that way and providing more help to people that are in that situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
How long have we had a supermajority for now, again?
10 years.
10 years? So for 10 years, we've had a supermajority in the State House. And
20. Longer than that? I think it's 20.
we've,
On one side.
I heard earlier that we've been collecting too much. That's the reason why we have a $6 billion surplus. But the supermajority sets that tax rate, right? So if we're collecting too much, then yeah, we need to cut taxes. But as long as there's a supermajority, I mean, you see where I'm getting at here? You tend to do the same thing over and over. Nothing's going to change. So I just find that interesting. But yeah, I would say that we need to cut it back. But if we cut it back, you know, you're still going to have DCS that's underfunded. You're still going to have foster kiddos. That just happened to me. One of my kids in the CASA program slept on the floor of the, or not the floor, he had a cot of the Monroe County DCS office for 4 nights. Yeah, you know, I would say that the state of Indiana that we're in right now, we could cut taxes and get rid of that surplus, but then, you know, you're still going to have kids sleeping on the floor of the DCS office. And I guess it depends on what aisle you sit on that if that's okay or not.
I would invest in education. I would invest in economic development incentives like we've been talking about tonight. Again, we want to attract businesses to Indiana. We want to help our current businesses, and then I would give some of it back. And then I would also keep some because you never know what's going to happen. So my answer is it would be a hybrid.
All right, thank you very much. And that concludes our question and answer portion. Thank you so much for all of your answers. We're going to go now into, yeah, we can give a round of applause for that. You got through that. We're going to go now to our closing statements, again, another 2 minutes, and we're going to go in the reverse order as we did with our opening statements, which means that, Tanya, you will be starting first.
Okay, all right. Thank you for sitting through this. I really appreciate when people come out, and it's really nice to talk to people and hear your questions. We all have busy lives, and everyone's doing their thing, but there's a lot of issues in Indiana. We do have a $6.1 billion surplus, which it's been pointed out many, many times. We're better off than Illinois, absolutely. But there are things that we could be doing with that money to help Hoosiers, and that's kind of my mantra is help people. Also, what else was I going to say? Thank you. Thanks, and I'm available after.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Next up, Mark Spellbrink.
Okay. In the brochure that I put together, I asked the question, why change representatives? And I think as I was thinking about this overall thing, the supermajority is a problem, but then you look directly down to the lower level to the individual that has been representing the area where I'm from for a period of time, and I try to think, what's the job of a state representative? Well, I think there's kind of twofold. One is to be out listening to people, engaging with people, coming to Cracker Barrels. Okay. And I think most of you probably are aware that the individual that I'm running against hardly ever comes to these Cracker Barrels. I'm sure you've not had to introduce him at some of those Cracker Barrels. So I think and a lot of people that I talk to say he's not available, he's not accessible. So I think that's the one piece that you need to do in order to, otherwise how do you know what the people in the community want if you're not making yourself available? And Cracker Barrels in particular, that one kind of touches me because I helped create one in Park County 25 years ago. I moderated it for probably 15 years or something. At one time we had 5 different legislators had pieces of Park County, and sometimes we'd have all 5 of them there. And yet, when they had a Cracker Barrel this spring, the individual I'm running against didn't show up for that one either, as well as not coming to any of the ones here. Then the second piece of the job is then to reflect that community and take those ideas to Indianapolis. And I think instead, in this case, we've got someone who's kind of in that radical extremist wing of the party that has the power. And so they go off in other directions and are not, in my view, properly representing the people here. So I think first you've got to engage, and then you've got to properly carry those ideas to the legislature. And in that case, I don't believe the individual that I'm running against is doing the job very well. And that's why I asked for that.
Next up, Curtis Cummings.
You said it pretty well. This is my fourth one of these, and my opponent, I haven't seen him. I went to 3 county fairs. Never saw my opponent. I was here every day for the Vigo County Fair. I don't understand why you spend so much time campaigning and being away from your family. Like, I love putting my daughter to bed and reading her 3 books every night. I love it. You spend so much time away from your family campaigning, and it's so hard to campaign. You spend so much money, and you're asking people for their own hard-earned money just to then take money from corporate PACs and not listen to your constituents, not come to these things. You know, if I had not ran this year, my opponent would have went unopposed for 6 years. That's not how democracy works, period. It's not. So very simple, and my ask for you is very simple. Just trust me with your vote. Send me to Indianapolis for 2 years. And if you're not happy with the work that I do for you and your family, then fire me in 2024, because that's what this job's supposed to be. That's what this job's supposed to be. You have to be available. You have to represent. You have to be a member of the community. And if you're not doing those things, then what are you doing? You're getting a $75,000 salary from the state of Indiana to sit around and not do your job. And I mean, you want to talk about wasting taxpayer money? Well, there it is. So CurtisForIndiana.com. Don't care how you spell it; it'll get you there. All the same. Please check it out. And my direct phone number's on there. You can call, text, email. I'll actually respond. It's weird.
Yeah. And finally, Andrew McNeil.
Well, it has been an honor and a privilege to be here tonight, and I know that probably you heard some things tonight that you didn't agree with and didn't like, and I appreciate your kindness and that you listened to me. So I have been campaigning now for a little over a year, and been knocking on a lot of doors, and we've had a lot of conversations, some of them very friendly, some of them not so friendly, but in all of them, I listen and explain my positions and listen to their point of view. And I think it's important that you understand I've built a career in customer service and in my business life. And I know how to work with folks that I disagree with, and I know how to work with folks that I agree with. And sometimes those are the harder ones. But it would be the greatest honor and privilege to be able to represent Terre Haute. I love Terre Haute, regardless whether it's me or whether it's Tanya. Definitely going to be supporting Terre Haute's economic growth and seeing it move forward in all areas. This is a great community. It's full of really good people. And I say that knowing I'm probably not getting any votes here tonight, but truly, it's a great turnout. It's an awesome thing that the library did this. It's great that the Tribune Star and the NAACP and the League of Women Voters, and I just really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And you did a phenomenal job.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much to all the candidates. We definitely appreciate it on behalf of the sponsors, on behalf of all of the organizers, the library, the League of Women Voters, the Tribune Star, and also the NAACP. We would like to thank you so much. I don't believe we're taking questions right now, because you can ask questions after we've concluded. We're not going to do it. I'm sorry. We're done at this point. We're done at this point. Thank you so much for attending today's session. please come forward and individually ask the questions. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your respect. Have a wonderful evening.